Welcome to the Up in Your Family Business podcast, where we dive into the heart of family business with intimate interviews, expert insights, inspirational stories, valuable resources, and practical tips to help grow your family business. Hi, I'm Todd Reimer, co-owner of Element 212 and the host of Up in Your Family Business. Thanks for tuning in. Whether you're listening or watching, we're glad to have you here with us. Each episode is intended to help family business owners and leaders gain valuable insights, solve real challenges, find inspiration, grow with purpose and intention, spot new opportunities, stay competitive, and ultimately build a legacy that leads for generations. So you're not responsible, Jeff, by the way, for fulfilling all those things.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know. All right, so let's meet our guest, Jeff Boone. Jeff Boone is the co-owner with his wife, Lynette, of Cowpokes Work in Western, and also of Jeff Boone Auction and Realty in Markville. And Cowpokes Work in Western can be found in Anderson, Indiana, as well as Cloverdale, Indiana. And his daughter, his son, and his son-in-law are also active in the business. Did I miss anybody?
No, you got it, Todd. Thank you.
Okay. So, Jeff, thanks for being here. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Yes. So I want to make it known, Jeff is. If you've seen some of our previous podcast episodes, you may recognize Jeff's face. Jeff was actually my very first guest. And Jeff, honestly, when I started this podcast, when I thought about who would be my first guest, you literally were. I'm like, Jeff would be perfect to be. You're a good speaker, good looking guy.
I don't know about that. But that was my first podcast too, so it was a first for both of us.
No way. Was it really?
Yes, it was, yes.
That was your first, really?
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But as an auctioneer, you've had lots of speaking experience.
I'm no stranger to the microphone, that's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. But what's funny, I always want to talk about work-life balance. And the reason I had you on that very first one is because when I heard that story about you and your family, how no matter how busy you were, no matter what you were doing, and you have a lot going on all the time, you and Lynette and your kids had dinner together. Mm-hmm. I don't know if every night, almost every night, pretty much every night?
Most every night, and if we don't, we kind of have like separation anxiety.
Correct.
Yeah.
Are you still doing that today, by the way? I asked you that back in last year.
What?
Had dinner together?
Oh,
stuff?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Almost all the time.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so marriage isn't changing that.
Well, it does change a few things. That my son and our new soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Gunner's going to be getting married.
Oh, that's right.
And now they do spend a good bit of time working with the church, and so there'll be some evenings and things and small groups that the kids will have that'll take them away in the evenings. But it's okay. It's for a good cause, right?
Heck, you have late lunches, right?
Right.
That's really cool. So, and truth be told, so you were my first guest back in February of last year. It was supposed to be January. So, true story. You were my first podcast guest. I had never done this before. So this whole setup was brand new for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And so Jeff and I did a really great interview. Luckily, the second one was even better. But we did our first interview. Everything appeared to be great. Mm-hmm. To be great. But ironically, the video was not recorded.
Yeah, the audio was not recorded.
The audio wasn't. Yeah. That was it. Thank you. You remembered. It was the audio that was not recorded.
Could have gone without looking at us, but hearing us was kind of pointless.
That's true. Either way, we couldn't. And I did two that day. I did two that day. I was so proud of myself. And then my team members went and edited them like right away just to see how they were. And they're like, I hate to break this to you. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it was a pretty big look of disappointment on your face when you found that out. I'll never forget it.
Yeah. So here it is. Now I don't know how much better I am at this 14 months later, but I think I'm a little bit better.
Hopefully we're recording. That's all I got to say.
Right. Hopefully you're recording. I do see the video. I think we're being recorded.
Yeah, I see the line moving on the
That's
monitor.
Right.
So.
That's right. So. But yeah, so love that story. I thought you gave us a lot of insights into what work-life balance means. Work-life balance, of course, is an interesting thing because you have a lot of people arguing that work-life balance doesn't really exist. But I don't think work-life balance is necessarily a 50-50 trade-off. I think work-life balance means I'm being fulfilled at home, I'm being fulfilled at work. Mm-hmm. And if you feel you have balance in your life in those two capacities, whatever that percentage is, then you have work-life balance. So a lot of people, have.
I like that.
Yeah, that's how. And I think you have that.
I think so.
Yeah. So why is Jeff here today? So at the very end of our first podcast, Jeff had I said, hey, is there anything else you'd like to share with the guest? And then I loved it. You went into what you thought was a big part of your work-life balance. We spent a lot of time talking about family. So it was only logical and sensible that you would interject some thoughts on your values. And you didn't use necessarily these words, but you touched on patriotism. You touched on family first. You touched on faith. You touched on hard work. And you talked about all these things that people would say are values, principles, things of that nature. And I said to you, I said, you have to come back someday and talk about these things. So here we are today. So I love it that you're back. I loved our first interview, but I think you are a man. I think you are a man of principles. I think you are a man of values. I believe that you not only have your values, but you live them out every day. And I think they do lead the decisions that you make in your marriage, in your family in general, in your business, and in the community. I really believe that to be true. So I have a lot of respect for you, Jeff, in that capacity, and I think you're the perfect person to be here today to talk about
Thank you.
this.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me just share a little information here, just to set us up, a little segue into our questions. I do have questions. Jeff, I think I told you before we started, I do like to have a more free-flowing conversation, which we will, but I think these are really important questions, and hopefully we can get these questions answered and still have that natural exchange. But there are some really good questions here, and I can't wait to see your answers on some of these things. So, all right, so one of the most powerful forces behind long-lasting family businesses is their values, and I think you would agree with that. Unlike non-family businesses, these values are often deeply rooted in identity and legacy, shaping everything from culture to decision-making. Research shows that family-owned and operated businesses that prioritize their core values tend to outperform their peers and adapt more effectively over time. Today, we will explore that truth with you, Jeff, as we talk about how values are defined. So we'll talk about the origin of your values, where they started. And I think we talked a little bit about that in our last podcast. I think your dad played a big part in your life, and how they were passed down to you and, of course, to the next generation, and then how you live those out in just your everyday operations. And feel free, Jeff, I mentioned that you have Cowpokes, work in Western, with the one with which I'm more familiar, but then you also have Jeff Boone, Auction and Realty. So as you talk through this, you're more than welcome to reference any specific business as you answer, but feel free to answer this just in general. And we'll make the assumption that your values are shared in both businesses. So feel free to share. And like I said, we'll just assume that unless you specifically said Cowpokes or Jeff Boone Auction and Realty, that you're referring to both. So with that said, let's talk about the origin of the establishment of your values. What are, and again, I mentioned them earlier about patriotism, family first, faith, hard work. What are the core values? And I know this is a loaded question, so just touch on the ones that are close, most dear to you. What are the core values that have guided your family business since the very beginning?
Well, I guess if we're going to talk about the beginning, we've got to talk a little bit about some of the background of where I got started.
Absolutely.
And I know in the last podcast we did talk a little bit briefly about the start in the auction business, but I think all of it really kind of goes back towards that side of my family and my upbringing. My grandfather, Mort McShirley, was a critical role in my life. My dad left when I was around 10. My grandfather was around. My grandfather didn't have any sons. He had 2 daughters, one of which is my mother. And so we kind of filled a role in each other's life.
Okay, so your grandfather, not
my
your
grandfather,
father.
yeah.
Okay.
And my dad was a great guy. He worked in the factory. He was not in the auction business, but my grandfather was. And so,
okay, thank you.
And I lived basically across the woods from him. And so when I jump off the school bus,
that's awesome.
I'd throw on my play clothes and ditch the homework, forget about that, head straight over to Grandpa's.
Really?
Yeah, and then, whether we were farming that day or maybe moving some livestock, or I was traveling with him in the pickup truck as we were going around buying equipment or whatever it was we were doing.
Wow.
I got to learn a lot from him.
Okay.
We had a lot of those intimate conversations as a child, and then as I grew up to be an adult, we got into heavier stuff and more about principles and core values and things like that. And I don't guess that it was ever really a scripted conversation.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, say, hey, son, let me tell you something. This is what you need to do. It wasn't that. It was more so of, this is what we do. I mean, and there's so many people that have come up to me and told me this story that I didn't know that happened to them. But multiple times we would drive around, and my grandpa would say, I got to swing by Lois's house over here, and I got to drop her off a check. I said, said, okay, why? And he said, well, I bought some cattle off of her, and I did a little better on them than I thought I was going to do at the stockyards. And so he'd go and give her a check for $50 or drop off a check for somebody for $100 or something. And he'd just go back to him and say, look, I did a little bit better, and I wanted to tell you I appreciate that, and thank you very much. And so it was just something that no one probably would have ever thought of or doing, and just those little tidbits of gratitude that he would show. But he was also a very faithful man. He spent, I said before, he spent all of his life trying to get himself to heaven, and it's not that we can do that because, Christ died on the cross for us. And so that has already been taken care of.
Right.
We don't have to do that. But his principles and his values were such that he wanted to live every day of his life.
He wanted to honor
Absolutely
that
he did.
Relationship.
He did.
Yeah.
And so again, that was subliminally. I was learning those things, and so that was kind of some of the core beliefs that was instilled in me at a very young age, was that there are certain things that you do. There's certain ways you treat people. There's certain ways that you represent yourself. Honesty is the key role in the business, and in the auction business, that's not always been perceived to be the highest level of thought.
Really?
No.
Okay.
And I think you kind of group, and you hear people group car dealers, and you group attorneys, and you group certain practices and professions into those groups. And it's a shame because over the years, as being an auctioneer, I've got heavily into the car auction business. So I would sell 3, 4, 5 automobile auctions a week, dealer auctions, and I got to meet a lot of these store owners, these new car owners, used car dealers, wholesalers. And what I found was, over the years, is these are a phenomenal group of great, trusting people across the board in general, right? Every profession has it's I don't know, it's bad apples in it. I don't care what profession it is. But a phenomenal group of people that very relationship driven, very dedicated to their honor and their word. They understand that, and we talk about this in the auction business, if you don't have your credibility, you don't have anything. And so my grandfather taught me that. And that's why I've got to go back to him so many times in everything that we do. And so then later in life, as I went on to college, we graduated college, and then we started Cowpokes, it was important to always keep those elements within that business. It was a different structure, a different look. It was the retail. It was completely new and different to us. But the core values all stay the same. And how you treat your business, how you treat your customers, how you treat your family as they work with you within your business, all those things are extremely critical, and they're all parallel. They're all the same. It doesn't matter. So I think as any business owner that's out there listening to this would say, okay, well, I can't relate to that guy because he's in the auction business because I'm a florist, or I'm a cake decorator, or I'm a factory worker, or whatever that is. I think it's just you try to instill those in your daily life, and those transfer to your businesses.
That's awesome. That's great. So I heard gratitude.
Oh yeah.
Honesty, faith, integrity. Any other ones that pop up that you think are critical?
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure there is.
Okay.
But I think,
those are big ones.
They're big ones, and I think that probably the strongest of those words is faith. I think if you've got faith in God, and you try to live your life with the same principles that Jesus did, and you take elements of the Bible and you inject those into your life, starting with your family, starting with you deep inside, transfer those to your family, move those into the people around you and into your business, everything else takes care of itself.
Are you vocal about your faith in the business world, or do you just live it out?
More so now than I've ever been.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think we talked last time.
I got a sense of that in the end of our podcast.
It's a daily growing challenge, but I think it's important to start your day out with a little bit of prayer. Try to end it when you remember. Interject it from time to time throughout your day when you feel like you need it. There's no right or wrong time. If you forget, okay, so what? Big deal. God don't care. He's forgiving, and he's always listening. And I've gotten deeper in my faith as I go. I'm a sinner like anybody else. I make all kinds of mistakes. We're all that way. We're all made of flesh, and anybody tells you they're not, well, guess what? They're not telling you the truth. So, I think we just got to live each day like that, and just remember none of us are perfect, and we just got to do the best we can do. And I think if you put God in the center of your life, and then you pray about whatever it is that's on your mind, you need direction, you need guidance, you need healing, whatever that is, and then you just pray about, you put it at his feet and let him handle it. Everything else takes care of itself. And I mean every single time. Sometimes it takes a while to figure that out, but it always does. It always works out. And when you can take that worrisome off of your plate, it allows you to focus on the things that you're supposed to be concentrating on, because you're not worried about the end result. You just know that it's going to be okay.
So it minimizes stress.
It does.
Anxiety,
Absolutely.
Worry, all that stuff.
There's an inner peace, and people talk about this, and the older I get, the more I find it. But there's definitely an inner peace that's there that without him in your life, you're probably not going to have it. You're going to be worried. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be stressed all the time. You're going to be taking those things out on other people and people around you. You're going to be taking them out on your employees, and there's no reason to do that.
And if you're facing a challenge or a difficulty, stress can hinder you from being able to focus on that problem and find a solution.
Absolutely. So it just allows us to be able to move forward, and so yeah.
Did you mentioned about, and thank you for in the very beginning correcting me. I apologize for mentioning your father and say your grandfather. I didn't want to. I'm glad you gave your grandfather credit.
Loved them both.
So it sounded like your grandfather didn't necessarily sit down and every one day a week sit down and have life lessons with Jeff, but it did sound like you learned a lot from example. Now, as a father in your own family or in your own business, do you tend to lead by example with like your grandfather did, or again, not just with your faith, but I mean your values in general? With your kids, did you teach them a lot through life experiences? Did you actually share with them these are values that are important to your mother and me, or did you just live them out?
Without giving any thought to it whatsoever, if I have to look back, I would say that what I did was merged what my experiences were as a youngster growing up with a grandfather who was very strict, very very passionate about his faith, to the point where he had almost zero tolerance for anything that wasn't of God. I mean, almost zero tolerance.
So he never had those. He never had those conversations where like, well, it's okay in this instance, or
no.
What's the big deal here? It's not that big. He was
cut and dry, very strict, and so that there was a lot of pushback to that within the family dynamic, because he was very demanding in that respect. Now looking back, I've got complete respect for him for his strength and his fortitude and his ideals, and the fact that and of course he was from a way different generation than us, know. And then, as when our kids came along, I always said, and I'm not going to be that way to them, but I do want to. No, I'm not going to probably lead by example all the time. I definitely don't. But I try to make sure that in my own mind and hopefully as an example to them, I show them that there is grace. There's times when we are not going to be perfect. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. We're going to blow a fuse when we shouldn't. We don't turn the cheek all the time when we should, and those things are going to happen. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're okay.
Okay.
So, I think just having those core beliefs there, and yet letting them understand that all of us are imperfect. We're all going to make mistakes. Do the best you can. Try to make corrections to that, and live your life to the fullest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We talk about different generations. We segment people out based on Gen X, Gen Y, Millennial, and we try to box people in based on that. And it does seem there is some validity to that, I guess. I was kind of encouraged. I thought, not to get political, but I was shocked at the younger, and I'm not trying to get into politics. I'm only going to say this and then segue into something else. But I was very surprised so I have a daughter who's 19, so she's part of that. What gen is that? Gen Z? I think it's Gen Z.
Okay.
I don't know. I lose track of all these. But I was surprised. I just assumed that each generation would get, more than the previous. And the younger people are the ones that turned out for the election that were more conservative, that actually had more faith-based values play into their decision-making, more patriotic values. That just shocked, forgive me for saying, it shocked the crap out of me. I couldn't believe it. I thought, with this next generation, we're screwed, because they're just going to get more and more entrenched into this non-faith-based view, this world view, and I was pleasantly surprised. So with that said, and again, forgive me, that's not a political comment, it's more of a generational comment. So tying that back to your family, your grandfather was a living, breathing example of what it meant to honor Christ, to be a man, to be honorable, to live out all these values that you have inherited and live out also. How do you see those being passed down? How do you see those being lived out in this next generation? Because your kids are also very young. How do you see that being passed down from one generation to the other?
Well, I'm very encouraged by it, really, to be honest with you. You mentioned that about how those with a little bit more faith-based conservative ideals come out to really to place their vote.
Right.
And I know just in our church at Catalyst in Pendleton, we have a huge youth ministry, and there's so many kids involved in that. We joke about it. There's almost more kids than there are adults.
Wow.
But it's very encouraging. My daughter, my son, my son-in-law, and Gunner's fiance Noelle, they're all very faith-driven. They spend time in the Bible. They spend time in prayer. They go to youth groups. They work within the church. They serve. I'm very proud of them for that. And so to see that as the trend, the fact that they're really focused on, I think they're paying more attention than what we maybe really thought as parents. We're like, okay, maybe this world's really going downhill, fast, and where's this next generation going to be? It's going to be terrible. You know what? I don't think so. I think that there's plenty of problems out there. There's plenty of children that are out there dealing with these issues and problems, but there's also a lot of young ones right now that are living a great example. They've got God in their life, and they're sharing it with their friends. They're on social media and they're pushing it out. I mean, social media is full of it right now, and it's awesome because it's a great counterbalance to some of the evil things that are going on out there right now.
I'm assuming your style is different than your You said you used the word strict with your grandfather. You don't strike me as being someone who is strict.
I'm not.
So how do you believe you were able to be impacted the way you were, and your children were impacted the way they were, yet you had two different styles?
Well, I'd say probably it was another one of those answered prayers.
Okay.
And
when I say strict, that's not a bad thing.
No,
it's just different style.
It's not, but strict can also a lot of times run them off,
right.
Push them away.
Right.
And
right.
I've seen that. I've seen pushback. It's sometimes you've joked about it for years. It's the preacher's son and the preacher's daughter. They're the ones that seem to get in the most trouble. And that's obviously not all the case, but it has been the case in the past when someone is just forced and pushed and demanded, as opposed to letting them have a choice in it. Again, leading by example, but also giving them a choice to make their own decisions. You can't force people to do what they don't want to do. Sometimes it just takes time, and they've got to come back around to it.
I have 3 young kids, 23, 21, and 19. And I have noticed, I look back when they were younger versus now, and I look back and, full transparency, I had the greatest intentions. I definitely lean more towards strict. I led by example too, and I taught. But I was so afraid of my kids going down one path that I think I leaned more towards strict, because it wasn't control, but I was so concerned and so afraid that they would make bad decisions. I was so afraid of the outcomes and the consequences that would come that I think I tried too hard to keep them from that, And here they are older, and finally, a couple years ago, I was just like, you know what, I quit. You know what? I've done all I can. They know who. I taught what I can teach. I led by example. I believe my values were lived out. They're going to have to make their own mistakes, whatever. But I noticed that once I pulled back on the reins, once I let go, my kids listened to me more. They were more willing to listen. And when I spoke to them out of love, and I spoke to them out of genuine desire to just make them better individuals, not necessarily prevent them from a path, but just helping them become the person that God intended for them to be. They listen more, and I'm having a greater influence. So obviously strict as you described does work, but I also believe, and I know we're getting off the path here, but it's real personal for me because as I hear you say that, I was more your grandfather style, and with my kids, it wasn't as effective. And now as I'm older, and my values have shifted in terms of my value now is not necessarily trying to prevent things, but trying to lead and trying to show them what could be based on good decisions versus bad, in a more loving, patient, compassionate, and letting them make mistakes and not getting worked up over it. Man, I'm seeing leaps and bounds. My kids they're just advancing so much quicker now. So anyway,
I think you're doing the right thing.
I just want to share that. So
sure.
So I appreciate your transparency and honesty, and I just couldn't help it. It hit me. Some of the things you're sharing really hit home for me, and I just love everything that you're sharing here. So thank you. Okay, so let's shift to business. Okay, so how are because this is big. We're busy every day, right? And I know your businesses have been around for a long time. There's been a lot of time to influence, but life is just so fast moving. A lot of moving parts, a lot of changes. Different people coming and going. So how are your values then reflected in your hiring, your leadership, and in your customer service? So how do you see that? How do you see your values that you have at home being transferred over to the business side?
Well, from the auction side of things that I'm involved with every single day, that's really where more of my focus is. Lynette, her focus is on the store side, on Cowpokes' side.
Right.
I try to be involved in that, some of the major decision making and thought process and goals. And we've got such a fantastic team over there, from everybody from the marketing to all of our sales help on the floor, the buyers, the management. We've got such a great group of people that they can handle things. They're doing things. And I think all of them, as well as our auction crew, share the same. Everybody has kind of the same moral compass. We like to use that term a lot.
Which faces north?
Yeah, hopefully. And, that's everybody's trying to, the goals and ambitions in both businesses, I always feel like are aligned with what our personal goals and ambitions are. And as far as from a standpoint of customer service and employees, it's that everybody goes back to that word that gets overused all the time, culture. Having that great culture, and it's
you love that word. You hate that word.
I love it and I hate it, but it's kind of like, what do you want your home to feel like? Not so much your culture, but what do you want your home to feel like? So our auction home, we want it to be fun. We want everybody to laugh all the time. We want to cut up, joke around, play pranks, have a great time doing what we do. Because if you're enjoying what you do on your day-to-day basis, if you enjoy coming to work, you're going to do a good job. And we've hired professionals that are really good at what they do. Our daily crew that's in there, they're just phenomenal. They take care of the work, they take care of the customers, they treat everybody like they want to be treated, and so we hear that kind of feedback all the time. So they're the real core reason why our business continues to flourish and grow rapidly. And we try to communicate well. Everybody tries to stay on the same page, and that I think is the key right there is have. Like my kids, they created a group text so we can communicate with everybody within the auction side of things on the day-to-day basis, and it's called Number One Auction Family. And so every time you open it up, that's what you read, and then you're sharing information back and forth. Hey, there's a guy who needs a jump start at the back of the field. Can you run out there and get him taken care of? Or somebody's in with a semi needs to be unloaded, or whatever that might be. But we're communicating back and forth, and so. Communication is key. So communication is key. Your employees are key. If you've got great employees, you don't have to worry about keeping customers number one. They're already taken care of.
Right.
And then, again, just keeping that family culture there, and having lunch with them. a lot of times, spending time with them around the table and communicating about their needs and wants and desires, and just making sure they understand what's coming up, what our goals are, and how we're taking care of those customers. Same way at Cowpokes, it's the same thing. We haven't always done a great job at it. We try to do a much better job at it. We do a Monday morning meeting that a lot of the management staff is in on, and we try to share these concerns. We try to talk about what's going on for the week, what we did last week, things that we need to improve on, and so we keep that open dialogue. And I know there's a lot of businesses don't do that, and I highly encourage you, if you're listening and you're a business owner, have at least a weekly meeting. And some people are great; they even do every morning, or they might do every afternoon. But stay in communication. That is a key there that we found has made a big difference in what we do. And all of that then works its way to the customer, where the customer walks in, they have a great experience, they tell everybody about it. That just helps you grow your business and make you more effective and successful.
Your kids have the advantage of living with you and Lynette and having dinner every night. It's easy for them to kind of pick up on all the signals as to what's important and what values mean and everything like that. How do you guys translate that into your non-family? That's a big deal. Like, I know you just talked a little bit about how it's lived out, but I'm assuming you guys don't have anything on the wall that lists all your different values. You don't necessarily every Monday morning remind everybody what your values are. So building off what you just shared, specifically, how do you guys effectively pass down those values that are near and dear to you onto your non-family business employees? How is it that you're able to accomplish that? Because that's not always easy to do.
No, it's not easy to do. No, we don't have a wall of sayings and scriptures and things like that for everybody to read every day, and we don't go through all that. It's very unstructured in that respect. I think it's more so of whenever a challenge comes up or a decision that may affect your credibility comes up, that you address it in a way that everybody understands why you made that decision. So if let's just say, for example, there's a particular situation where somebody's not being forthright or truthful in a situation, maybe it's a customer, and you can see that coming. I think it's important not only to bring that to that person's attention, but also the fact that we headed that issue off, because again, it goes back to honesty and integrity, and that is going to be what's going to propel your business. Sometimes doing the right thing is the hardest thing to do, and if you can lead by example in that respect from a leader, and your employees see that, and they will do the same, because they know that that's what you want. They know that's what the core belief is. So without even actually telling them, just by leading by example, I think that is where you really start to have an effect.
So the values are observed and felt through key moments, through those decisions.
I think so.
You can see what precipitated those decisions.
And a lot of times you talk about them afterwards, or you talk about them beforehand. Hey, here's how I think we need to address this situation. And don't get me wrong, it's not like our days are full of those things. Yeah. It's just that those are key learning moments that you have to take advantage of. But that if you shuffle them under the rug, or you let them go by, and or you don't really address them, and we've all done that. That's when you see that you have problems. But when you do address them, and you do show, and you do lead by example, it seems like, man, it just all of a sudden everybody's on the same page, and we don't have to worry about those things anymore.
I'm going to ask you a big question, as it just kind of struck me. So Jeff Boone, Auction and Realty, made sense. It was in your blood. Your grandfather was an auctioneer. I mean, it was almost like it was meant to be. Cowpokes is different, and I know we talked about this a little bit in our first one about the origins of Cowpokes. But I doubt I'm sure at a certain age you knew you were going to be an auctioneer, but I doubt at age 16 you were like, someday I'm going to open up a working Western retail store.
Not at all.
But I do believe the Western world also carries with it a lot of the values that you mentioned, right? I really do believe, that's how I see it. That patriotism, is a big one to me in the Western industry. Just that world that they live in. You can see you go to any event. You go to any event at rodeo, and patriotism and faith and everything is just all over the place, which I think is really cool. So let me ask you this: the auction and realty was in your blood. Did your values play a part in? Because you could have started any other business, and just because you love that lifestyle doesn't mean, hey, I really like the Western lifestyle, so I think I'm going to start Cowpokes. Did your values and the values that surround that space play a part in your deciding to start that business, or irrelevant?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess I really never put the two and two together, but you're exactly right. You hit it on the head. In the Western industry, that Western lifestyle carries all those things you talked about: patriotism, honesty, integrity, hard work, discipline.
Yeah, the hard work, right?
All those things are there, and that is our customer. That's what we love about our customer. The same as we do in the auction business on the agricultural side of things. We love that ag customer, that construction worker, that guy that's working 60 hours a week, and the blue collar guy. We love all of that. That's who we are too, and we appreciate that, and we like being associated with those type of people. Kind of a little backstory on Cowpokes. We really didn't talk about this in the first interview about how we got started. You want me to go into that just real quick?
I would love to, yeah.
So coming out of high school, got a scholarship to judge livestock at Blackhawk in Kewanee, Illinois, and that's where I eventually met Lynette. She was in the equestrian side of things. I was on the livestock side.
Okay.
And we got out there, and because we would have to compete, we had to have a sport coat. We had to have on Wranglers or some sort of a jean. We had to have on boots. Usually it was the Justin Roper. I'm going back a long ways now, really dating ourselves. But we had to have these things as part of the team look. And so we always joked about the fact that we were going to start a store one of these days because we couldn't really find a Western store that had cool stuff. It was like, we need some cool stuff. We don't want all hee-hawy, hokey looking
Everything was still traditional, older.
Yeah, because remember, of course, I was born in 70, and so, here I am in 1980.
You were born in 70 as well? I forgot about that. We're close in age,
We are. And so, there weren't very many Western stores. There wasn't any online stuff going on because the internet didn't exist, when we were kids.
Right.
And so there wasn't any e-commerce and that sort of thing. So we were talking about it. We joke around about it. So we're going to start a store one of these days and just have some cool stuff. Forget all the old ugly stuff. We're going to have cool stuff. And we... fast forward, Doug and Lisa Edge, great friends of ours, still to this very day, we just started talking about it. And to make a long story short, I got a phone call, and I reached out to Doug in 1992, and I said, "Hey, do you want to start this store thing?" He goes like, "Man, so we got a baby on the way," and I said, "He's finishing up school," and he said, timing wasn't right. My wife and I got married when we did, because she'd been riding since she was a baby.
Oh.
We got married on horseback at our farm. And so
of course you did.
Well, Western wedding, and we went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming for our honeymoon. Oh. And while we were there, we were on a ranch. We spent the week on a ranch riding horses out in the mountains. And we would go into town, and Jackson Hole was just really super cool. At least it was back then, and I guess it's phenomenal now. But we would visit these shops, and we kind of fell in love with these little shops. Like, man, this is awesome. Love this lifestyle. Love this look. And came back, and Doug, now this is in July of 1993, Doug calls me up and says, "Hey, you still want to do that Western store thing?" I said, "I do."
Wow.
So we talked, and he says, "I got a location." I said, "No, that'll never work. We got to be on the south end of Anderson. That's got to be right off the interstate. That's going to be the key to our success." He's like, "Yeah, you're right." So again, we try to put our heads together. This is, again, July of 1993, and we tried to put our heads together. We tried to figure out what we were going to do, how we were going to put the money together. We went to the bank, the bank says, "Nah, I'm sorry. So we know about you, your family dynamic." Doug and his father had Northgate True Value Hardware. His granddad was Ples Matthews, had Matthews Markets. Very prominent business people. My grandfather was in business. They all knew us all, but they said, "Yeah, we just, if you want to start a gas station restaurant, we'll be happy to do that. But
really,
store, we got no belief in that. So
wow,
we're out." Well, we had to regroup, and then we went to his grandfather, and we both put our houses, wrote a note, and we borrowed $32,500 a piece, $65,000.
Wow.
And we thought, we're in business. We're going to be just fine. Well, this by now is sometime around August of 93. went to our first buyer's market in the fall, which would have been August or September of 93. Went to our first buyer's market for Western Market. It was in Indianapolis. We said, okay, it's a 3-day show. Let's meet back here. 4 of us said, let's meet back here for lunch at noon. Now, we're on our first day of a 4-day show. We met back. We laid all of our invoices down. We'd already spent $100,000, and we still had a couple days yet to go. We had $65,000 to spend.
Oh, wow.
Needless to say, we were cash poor from the very beginning. So we had to learn a lot of valuable lessons about business and getting started. And we tore down old buildings. We made our own displays. We did whatever we could. We leased a spot across the parking lot from where we currently are right now. Fast forward, we were there in that location for 10 years. Doug got into the radio business. He's been very successful in multiple businesses. He needed to move on into that. So at that point, we split things up. He took off. We stayed focused on the business and pushed it along all those years. Had some help from Jan and Ted Begley. They became part of it and helped us for a while. Then they retired back out of it. And then we moved into that location we are now at the Kittles, was a Kittles furniture store. We were able to buy that. That was huge for us. It gave us the square footage we needed. We went from 3,500 square feet to 20,000 square feet.
Good location.
Great location on a major busy road. It was a major business booster for us. We changed the look and the dynamics and the name of our store a little bit. We really concentrated on trying to bring in that work customer, try to drive customers out of the Indianapolis market to come see us, and it worked. And then again, fast forward to a couple of years ago, we were able to work with Carl and Cindy Harlan at C-Bar-C Arena in Cloverdale, Indiana, where we built our second location. We're tied to that bit, connected to that building there, which is called Cowpokes Arena at C-Bar-C. That's been great from a marketing standpoint, but that's kind of the growth of Cowpokes in a nutshell, and how that got fired up and how it got started. So.
I had to ask you that question because, I mean, who you are, the stuff you're sharing today, the things I've observed, I just was thinking, I wonder if his values and everything, if that played a part. Like, this would be perfect for me.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It did. It wasn't conscious. It was something that we loved.
You were drawn to.
And we were drawn to it. Yes.
Yeah. But you were in that space. You loved that world that you were in.
We did.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. All right, so no inspirational story about how your values precipitated Cowpokes.
No,
just ruined my whole interview, Jeff. I tell you what, that was the most important question of my. Well, we're done now, so
okay.
Thanks for listening, everybody. No, just kidding. All right. Let's talk about the long game here.
Okay.
So let's talk about some long-term success, resilience. We all know about You've been around since, you said 93? So you've been through some tough economic times. Okay.
Bunches.
Right. And again, that's probably where your faith really came.
Yeah.
So this is a good part here. So you can give, basically, where have your values helped you in business, whether some just difficult times, tough economic times, whatever it might be? You mentioned about your faith, how important that is. We mentioned about how that'll help get you through just about everything. But let's talk about maybe a very specific time in the history of your businesses. Where did your faith really come into play to help you get through a really tough time?
Well, I wish I would have had a stronger faith during some of the really tough times, particularly after once we got started, we got into business and we realized that, hey, this is going to be a long haul. This isn't a short game by any means to success. And carried a lot of that weight and burden on our shoulders. Okay. Both Lynette and I both did.
Okay.
And I think this is where we kind of can, I guess I can kind of share with you that trying to handle all this on your own is not the right thing to do. I remember a lot of times, particularly 2008, when the market crashed and everything went downhill. General Motors before that had moved out of town, and so we lost a big part of our customer base. 2 major Western stores in the Indianapolis markets, they both decided to close their doors and then liquidate multiple stores in the Indianapolis market. That all happened early in our infancy of the store as well. So we were losing all those sales to those going out of business structures that were happening. All of that stuff just kind of kept cascading on us, one thing after another, and we were like, boy, is there even going to be any light at the end of the day? Because this doesn't look good. And so we did deal with that, and I think that that's where we learned that, and at the time definitely wasn't praying on it like I should have been, wasn't putting it at God's feet like I should have been, trying like, okay, what do I got to do? How am I going to handle this? What do I got to do next to make this thing successful? How are we going to get out of this hole? And so looking back now, you're like, okay, well, there was a better answer to this. I just didn't realize it. So that's why I'm probably a little more vocal about it now, because I see that it does work. And when I started just really concentrating on those things, and I would see that there was answers to those prayers, it's like, well, this really does work. It's not just something somebody made up years ago and says, hey, if you do it, it'll work. It really does work. And I don't know, again, there's not a definitive moment that I said, okay, this is it. It's just been gradual. It's been ongoing. It's been slowly building. And I think that's why I try to tell people, look, don't get discouraged. Don't expect it to maybe happen over. Some people, it does happen overnight. Others, it takes us a while. It's just, it's like an old oak tree. It just grows a little bit at a time, and but it's strong.
So what do you think got you through 2008 and 2020? Because 2020 was tough. I mean, a lot of businesses were shutting down, and I know Cowpokes. There was no way you guys were shutting down, and you guys rolled up your sleeve and said, "Not us," and you guys did what you had to do. But what really drove that confidence and that strength to get through that difficult time?
In 2020. And it happened back in 2008 too, but I applied it to 2020. I met a guy by the name of Ed French, who was in the car auction business. It was he worked for Ford Motor Company, and all of his particulars I don't know exactly, but he was a very well-known businessman. And Ed, when I think it was 2000. I know it was 2008 when Ed and I were talking, and we noticed that as a car auctioneer, I was working for multiple car auctions. They were all retracting. They were all basically pulling back. They were cutting staff. They were cutting advertising. They were cutting all these things. And we were talking about. He was asking me about our business, and I said, "Well, we're struggling too." And he says, "Jeff," if there's one thing you ever remember that I told you in business, is that you cannot retract your way to success." And I stopped and I thought about that, and he said it again, and I thought, you know what, Ed, you're right. And we went back and we talked about it, and we said, here's what we're going to do. We are going to drive forward. Things look tough. The markets look ugly.
Yeah.
Everything is bleak. But what are we going to do? We're going to dig our heels in, and we're going to push harder than ever. We're not going to retract. We're not going to cut staff. We're not going to hold back. We're going to start pushing, and we're going to try to get a bigger piece of this pie when it all comes out. And that's what happened. That's what happened in both places. So I'm grateful to that advice.
So you applied that in 2008 and 20?
Yeah, I think we apply it to every day now.
Every day.
Yeah.
Now, right?
There
you go.
We are such a competitive group of people. I think, on both sides, we want to be the best that we can be. We want to learn all the time. We want to improve all the time, whether it's a physical structure or it's just a business practice in general. We want to make those improvements all the time. And I think that your customers see that, and they respect that, and they appreciate that. And so that's a big part of it too. It's just being competitive, not getting back on your heels and letting people take advantage of you. Just drive forward in success.
I think in a lot of ways, 2008 was probably harder.
Yeah.
I think it was, because even though 20 was hard, 2020, I'm not an expert in either one of them, but I do know, at least in 20, even though businesses were going out of business, the business that stayed in business, that were able to stay in business, people were still spending money. Back in 2008, people weren't spending money. People were fearful. They were holding back.
They were really holding back. In 2020, they were spending money. Yeah.
But you still had to fight to stay in business. It was an interesting thing. Even though money was being spent, businesses were shutting down.
Sure.
It's interesting. But in a lot of ways, a lot of these younger people are going to remember 20, but in a lot of ways, 2008 was way harder, I think, on businesses.
I agree.
So, okay. So how do you think your values, I know we all sit down and we do our X's and O's from, operational perspective, marketing perspective. Strategy is a big word, right? But how do you, when you look ahead, you've been doing this quite a long time now, How do your values play a part in the future of your businesses? How do you see your values playing a part in your long-term success?
Oh, well, now I think that's the part that's pretty exciting because we have refined our values over the years and we've become a lot more vocal about it internally. I think that gives us so much more hope to the success and in the future. That's the part that's pretty exciting about it because we do know that we have teams that are in a lot of ways laser focused on the future and success. And they're keeping those core principles at their heart and in the center of all that makes me have complete confidence that that's going to be, the future is really bright for us.
That's awesome. Something stood out, refined values. Do you mind expounding on that a little bit? How have you refined your values over the years? What does that mean?
Well, I think you just, over a period of time, you take honesty to a different level.
Oh, okay.
You to a higher level.
So not change. Okay.
Not so much change. It's just dialing it in a little bit more, being more focused on certain aspects of it.
Okay.
Your integrity. Everybody talks about customer service, and that's a big thing. How you treat people. From just dig a little bit more into their lives and their conversations with them. Let them know you do care. It's not a facade. You actually do care about them. You want them to do well. In the auction business, every transaction that we have, whether it's it's an estate situation with a widow that is completely overwhelmed and consumed, and she doesn't know the next step to take. She's got stuff she's got to get rid of, and she don't know who to trust. She don't know how to get it done. To be able to be the people, the crew that comes in there and say, hey, let's take this off your plate for you. We will take care of it. We will handle it. And for them to see that it's done and done right, and then as like I said, and then you're refining all those steps along the way. I mean, every part of that procedure is you just get a little bit better at it all the time. And I think that's where you just looking forward, you're going, okay, we're getting a lot of this stuff figured out. Yeah, there's always stuff to improve on, but we're getting better in every little area. Every aspect of our business is getting better all the time.
Yeah, I made the mistake, and I don't know why, but when I saw the word refined, for some reason I thought change, adjusting. But for you, refined means really just sharpening the blade.
Yeah,
gotcha. That's really cool. So, you have what do you think? Do you think your values, and not to put you on the hot seat, but you have two successful businesses, and for a lot of people, the material goods are important to them. Not to say that we don't deserve things; we work hard,
sure,
right? But we have material goods, we have our businesses, we have our family. In your case, your values are really important to you. What do you feel is going to be your legacy? What do you feel of in your life will be the long-lasting thing that you pass down to your children will then pass down to theirs? What do you think that is? Is that a value? Is that something? Is that a belief? Is that a principle? Is it that simple, or is that?
I really don't think about, and you kind of touched on this in the first podcast about legacy, and I
do, yes.
Yeah, and to go back to that, just to touch on it, I said that really we didn't, when my grandfather was alive and was creating this legacy that we really didn't know was there until after he was gone. Then we were like, oh wow, he did leave behind a legacy,
Yeah, you don't really think about that word very often.
Think about that. I don't really think about that word, but
I'll use a different word. Are your values, if you could, would you say that the values that you have passed on to your kids that you live out every day, would you say that is like top priority for you? Would you say that's of greatest importance?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. And hey, you know what? And they teach me things too. They teach me things all the time. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's a good point. I need to do that too. And so it's kind of a shared experience, and that maybe we're building this legacy together.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
And I hope that, 100 years from now, Cowpokes are still around. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't. In the auction business, hopefully it is, and maybe it's another couple generations.
I think you're in good shape. You got a lot of your family. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of family businesses don't make it. to the third generation.
They don't, and they
because
don't have
their kids just don't have that passion and energy.
See it all the time. People, business owners that don't have family members that are wanting to take it over, and and I think that's painful for a lot of them. And there's some that just don't want their family to take on and continue it on, but there are a lot that do, and I'm just very fortunate that we have it in both sides.
I really love, you touched on it. You said you're learning from them. I love that. And when I was doing some research on the importance of values in business, they did talk about how it's not necessarily the previous generation speaking to the next, like, you don't know anything, so just hear me out. So what, if you don't mind, just real quickly, expound on that a little bit. What are some things that you're learning from your kids?
Well, last night they showed me how to run the TV remote again.
Oh, well, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's good.
We got that figured out. At least till next time I forget.
I'm horrible at technology. I'm horrible.
So, I think that they do. They bring the element of knowledge on the technology side of things.
Sure.
They bring that drive and that ambition to learn more about it, to implement it in our daily practices. That's helpful. Just the youth, the energy that's there from their youth is incredibly valuable in the business. I can't imagine not having some youth in our business, both businesses, because you need that. And I think it's foolish for us as leaders and parents and family members to think that we're smarter than they are all the time. It's not the case. Yeah, we've got wisdom, we've got experience on our side, but they've got drive and energy, and they see things a little differently than we do. And it's important for us to pay attention to those things, because that's what's going to propel us into the future. It's going to make us better than our competition.
It's one of the, I know it doesn't directly tie to values, but in a way it does. Like, you value their input, you value their experiences and their knowledge, which is really important. You read a lot about family businesses, one generation to another. This is the way it's done. This is the way it's always been done. I've been doing this longer. A lot of these ego type driven things come into play, and one of the things I've learned is that the family businesses that succeed, number one, you have to have the next generation want to be a part of the business. Check. But the next thing is the previous generations. There are things they want to pass down that they believe should be passed down, that no matter what generation we're talking about, these are the principles and values that need to be in place. However, if that previous generation doesn't listen to the next generation, if that next generation doesn't have a voice, they're eventually they're going to lose that passion, and they're going to be out of it.
Yes.
They won't want to continue it. So they have to feel they play a role in driving things as well. They can't,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I'm assuming you're experiencing that, especially on the auction side. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's dad joke time.
Uh-oh.
Yep, I know. All right, so I'm going to ask you the dad joke. If you can answer it, great. If you can't, it's okay. When I first started doing these, I didn't do a dad joke when I first started these. And what I initially did was I would ask it, and then we would post the answer on Facebook, and it just became, it's not that important. So I still like to do the dad joke, and I like to ask it of my guests. There was my last guest. I had three of them, and she actually guessed 2 out of the 3. I was extremely impressed. I didn't expect that.
Well, don't count on me to get this
I know. And I'm not even saying these are good ones. I'm just, these make me laugh, but might not make you or the audience laugh.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
I'm ready.
Like I said, Jeff, you're a smart guy, so even if you don't guess this, you're still doing okay. Why did the man fall down the well? Why did the man fall down the well?
Why did the man fall down the well?
Yes.
Well.
Yes. Well,
I don't know.
Okay. Because he could not see that well.
Okay. You say you got a couple more jokes?
No, just that one.
Oh, boy.
I almost had a few, but so I love it. Why did he not see the well? Because he could not see that well, okay. And he also couldn't see that well.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
Maybe I'm the only person on the planet who thinks that's hysterical.
No, I doubt it.
Why did the man fall down the well? Because he could not see that well. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
all right.
There's always next time.
This whole interview's be derailed. Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap. Next time I'll have 2 or 3 to make up.
You're good.
Okay. So just the final questions. I always like to wrap up with kind of like final thoughts, advice, things like that. And I like that with you because this was the section that led to our being today. So family business leaders who are trying to define their values and they're trying to align those values in the business, what advice would you have for them? And I know that's a big one, so take your time.
It is.
But I really do want to hear what you have to say.
I'd say listen to everybody around you.
Okay.
Take the blinders off. Take the hands off your ears. Sit and really listen to what everyone's telling you. Listen to what the customers are telling you. Listen to what other business people around you are sharing with you. Listen to what, if your family is involved in the business, listen to them. Pick up on the cues. Watch how they react to how you speak to them, how they react to when you ask them to do things. Pick up on all those cues and let all those things play into how you address these things in the next situation. But definitely listen to people. Listen to different podcasts. Research your industry. Research ways to be better at things you feel like you're not good at. If you feel like you're not good at something, you're probably not. And so do whatever it takes to find a solution to those things. If you're just not good with being a good manager or a good people person, there's plenty of resources out there to help you get better at that. And I think you've just got to keep your mind open to all of those things. Let technology be your friend. We talked about faith. I mean, that's the core. That's where you got to start. But I mean, you also got to help yourself. God gave you all these places to make decisions. Use them in everything that it is that you do, and you will get better. And when you improve that family environment in your business, you and that family are all your employees too. They're your family as well. They count too. And just address any of the major issues. And if you've got a family member that's treating the employees wrongly, or not, then you got to take that up with them too. You got to make sure there is no internal issues that are going to make things worse and worse and worse. That are creating bad culture, bad family environment. You got to correct those, and those are tough. Those are hard, but you got to be firm, and you got to make some of those decisions. But definitely listen to all the people around you, and if you pay attention and you try to make improvements, you're going to be okay.
How do you balance that? How do you balance between listening to what other people have to say and staying true to what you really believe?
Oh, yeah. Well, you kind of talked about 2020 and the whole COVID deal and where we were at that time. And we were being told to shut down. We were being told to wear these masks. That was the best thing to do. You had to get the shot. I mean, it was all that stuff, And, now looking back, we know that it's way different than what we were being convinced or trying to be convinced.
Right.
And I think there was an example of we as certain ones of us, I think you included, we were really resisting a lot of these things. We knew that in the back of our mind there was probably a more sinister reason for a lot of this stuff that was happening and the way they were trying to make us believe. And we tried to hold our values and principles, and it was tough because the way the world was like, you got to do this, or you're either going to, and there was a lot of people that passed. It was terrible, but there was also a lot of things that we knew were not right, and now we found out that they're not. And I think that you've got to stick with your gut. You've still always got to go back with your true beliefs. You've got to push back when you know that the outside world is probably not necessarily right in your own mind. You've still got to stick to your core gut, your beliefs, and don't back down from that. Don't back down from it.
Yeah, 2020 was interesting for us because, as soon as they announced the 2-week shutdown, we lost like two or three clients immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Right away. But what helped us is we had some clients who matched, like, we're fighters, and we're like, we're not closing our doors. We're going to roll up our sleeves and do what we have to do. I don't know if that's a value or not, but I don't know where you'd put that. But what did drive our decision was, now granted, if all of our clients had quit, then we would be in trouble, right? But here's the thing, and we've learned this over the years. Values are not questionable. I'm trying to think how to say this. You can sometimes have values to a fault. And so it goes back to what you said. You definitely don't want to have blinders on. Like I would say, over the years, we have been so focused on culture and so focused on putting our team members first that we sometimes didn't see business indicators that told us otherwise. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you still have to make business decisions in spite of what you believe to be true. So like we care about our employees and we want to do whatever it takes to protect our employees. But sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean that you put blinders on and don't recognize an opportunity where maybe that employee shouldn't be a part of the team anymore. Or, hey, if your bank account's going down, you might be making some mistakes. You don't want to just be like, well, no matter what, we're doing this. I mean, you can't be stupid, right? But what did drive us during COVID, and I hate saying that word because it's it did happen, was we had people on our team who they had food to put on the table. And our accountant, and this is not a knock on them, they were telling our banker, our accountant, all said, you got to cut your staff in half right away. And my business partner and I, Tammy, we said, no way. Because when we first started our business, the one thing we said is we will never sacrifice our team members to advance ourselves. We will never do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we love serving family-owned and operating businesses is because you can talk about all these different values. The one thing that I believe that family-owned and operating businesses have the corner on the market on is that those owners they are selfless, and they do realize that this is a unit. We need you, you need us, we do this together. And I've seen a lot of business owners make sacrifices, take paychecks to make sure that they pay their employees. That's incredible to me, and that's what family-owned and operating businesses do. Yes, so I don't know what value drives that. I'm not really sure. You might want to speak to that, but we were like, there's no way we're just going to cut these team members. We're going to fight it out. We have clients that are fighting it out, so we're going to get in the trenches together, and we're going to get through this together. And in all full transparency, if we had not gotten one of those. What were those loans that you don't talk? I don't know why I can't think of the word right now. I just said it 2 days ago, but we got one of those loans, which was really our tax money just coming back to us. But anyway, if it had not been for that, I don't know. Full transparency, I don't know if we would have made it. But our initial reaction was, we're not afraid. This really sucks. We're losing some of these clients, but we're going to fight the fight. We're going to roll up our sleeves, and we're going to get in the trenches with our current clients who are willing to fight as well. And I'm proud to say we never cut one team member. Yeah. We never did. Yeah. I'm pretty proud of that. Yeah. So, can't remember where I was going with that, but yeah. So, anyway, I wanted to share that.
We did the same thing. We did the same thing that you did. We didn't cut any team members. We had to cut back our hours a little bit because they were just basically telling us we couldn't even open. Yeah. But then I've always kind of had this little thing in the back of my mind. Rules are meant to be broken, and we would do everything we could to work around all those situations. We were delivering packages out to the cars. People were pulling up. Right. We were doing everything that we could to stay open, and the auction business the same way. And I'm just glad that that's behind us now.
I am too.
I mean, we
learned a lot from it.
We did. I think we all learned a lot from it.
Appreciate you saying that. There was something you said I think specifically about, and that just made me think about that. And I don't know what value drives that, but I know it's there somewhere. We just made a commitment at the very beginning when we opened up in 2008. We just said that we're never going to hurt one of our employees or sacrifice one of our employees to advance our own desires. Right. Never will do that. Nope. And we never have. Nope. So anyway.
That's awesome.
Any thoughts from you on what value drives that? Could that be, I don't know. I'm trying to think what that would be because you did it. We did it.
A good friend of mine, David Lewis, said one time, and he's heard it from somebody else, I'm sure, but he said, heroes aren't born; they're cornered, and
I like that.
So it's you fight. You got to fight your way out of that corner. And I think that not that we're heroes, but we we definitely know that when we're cornered, we gotta push back, we gotta fight back, we gotta make ourselves successful. And we because we are basically we're defending the family, we're defending the team, and so as leaders, we have to show that strength, and we've got to have that fortitude, and we got to lead by example in that respect. And so it's just unconscious; you just do it.
Yeah, there's a value in there somewhere. The whether it's resilience, I don't know if resilience is a value, hard work, determination. I know that we refused to be in fear, and we just were confident, and we believed that God was going to lead us through it.
Absolutely.
And I think that played a big part in it. So, okay. I know you talked about your faith. The answer is probably your faith, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway. So, no matter what happens in the world, no matter what happens in the economy, no matter what happens in your industry, what is the one value that is uncompromisable? Like it's the one value that you know that you will always hold true and dear.
It goes back to integrity. I'm going to use that big word. I'm going to use that word because that's so encompassing of a lot of different things. Okay. And I think it's just important. It's the one thing that I want my kids to carry on is always have that level of integrity, no matter what. Like I said, it's tough decisions, make the right choice all the time. Just try to make the right choice all the time.
I think I like that. And I appreciate you disproving me. I thought you were going to say your faith. But it's interesting. What I will tell you, now that you say that, a lot of people say love is the most important thing. And I sometimes argue that care and compassion is more important because I know you can love someone and still hurt them. You can love someone and still do horrible things. Sure. But if you care and have compassion for someone, that's going to dictate your actions. When I think of integrity, I know there are people who have a strong faith. They don't necessarily always operate out of integrity. So having faith is not enough. It's the most important thing. But in your day-to-day operations, you can't just say, "I believe in God, therefore I'm gonna do everything right." You have to have. If you don't have integrity, all your other values are in question.
That's right.
I agree with that. So I appreciate you saying that. That's really cool. Thank you. All right. Well, let me share. I like to always share with the audience some information about the businesses that my guests represent. So I'm gonna share with the audience where they can learn more about your businesses. Perfect. Okay. So if you want to go to the website, you can go to cowpokesonline.com or jeffbooneauctions.com. If you're a YouTuber, just look up Jeff Boone Auction and Realty. Facebook, they're both on there, so you can find Cowpokes Work in Western and Jeff Boone Auction and Realty on Facebook. You're all over the place, by the way. Instagram, you can find both Cowpokes Work in Western, Jeff Boone Auction and Realty. You're on X. You can find Jeff Boone Auction and Realty.
Really?
Yeah, I found you on there.
Oh, cool.
I'm just telling you, you're on there. I knew. I was wondering about that. I was surprised. I was like, really? They're on X?
Back to the kids.
I know. I'm telling you. It's probably. I'm sure Krista had something to do with it. And then this one was kind of cool. Cowpokes Work in Western's also on TikTok.
Yep.
So that was cool. So Jeff Boone and Auction and Realty on X. Cowpokes Work in Western on TikTok. And then this was funny.
And so is the auction business. It's on TikTok also.
Okay, you are on TikTok now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I appreciate you correcting me. I was wondering about that.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, hey, that's all right. That's all right. It makes sense. It makes absolute sense. And then the one that I thought was really cool is I actually found Cowpokes Work in Western on TripAdvisor.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you're on TripAdvisor as a
wow.
destination.
Perfect.
Perfect. Which makes sense, right? So I thought that was really. I'm like, they're on trip, and that makes sense because if I think I shared in our first interview a couple years ago, we had friends come in from Crown Point, and they were staying at a hotel in Anderson, and he told me and he was in for a baseball game, and they were in one of these local baseball fields, and I said, "Are you enjoying your visit in Anderson?" So I thought he was going to tell me about restaurants he visited or the games he played. And he's like, "Oh man," he goes, "I went over to this place called Cowpokes Work in Western, and I got a new shirt and a new cowboy hat." And he showed me the new cowboy hat. So he actually, his favorite part of his trip and his visit was going to Cowpokes Work in Western.
Awesome.
I know. I thought
Awesome.
I thought that was really, really cool. So that's neat. So it makes sense you're on TripAdvisor because you are a place to go.
Yeah.
But I was still shocked by that because I never really thought about a retail store being on TripAdvisor. But when people travel, they shop.
They want to do things.
They shop. So it makes absolute. And then you go back to your story. Of all the great things you did, I know you were incorporating your story, but obviously when you went out west, you enjoyed your shopping experience.
Sure did.
So that was a destination too.
Yes.
So, well, Jeff, this idea of you coming on today was born like 14 and a half months ago, which is really I just can't believe that.
Hard to believe.
I can't. It feels like just like 6 months ago that you were here. So thank you for doing the first interview. Thanks for being my very first guest and coming back and being my second guest.
Thank you.
I still can't. Your memory is better than mine. But yes, you are correct. We had the audio, we had the video, not the audio, which was just probably couldn't publish that. That would have been hard. So that probably would have been hard. But then thank you for coming back on. Again, I said in the very beginning, when I think of integrity, when I think of values, when I think of faith, you are definitely one of those individuals that comes to mind. I think you are. I think your values come out just in who you are as a man, and how you operate your business, and just how you conduct yourself in a lot. So I have a lot of respect for you in those areas, and I just want to thank you for coming on and making that connection between where it all started, how it lives out in your family, how you pass it down to the business, and just tying that all back to your values. I think it's just wonderful.
Those words are all too kind. I certainly appreciate it.
No, I really do appreciate it as well. Just have a lot of respect for you, so thank you. All right, so thank you for listening or watching Up in Your Family Business podcast. You can find more episodes on iHeart Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or at Element 212. So until next time, may you, your family, your team, your customers, and your community be truly blessed.